y'all know we gotta do it. The VR has been updated. I'm here to let you know just what has changed with the NU metagame, because there's honestly been quite a few changes. We've had bans, we've had tier shifts. So many things are different now compared to just even 1 month ago, back when we had Talonflame, Umbreon, Cresselia, Iron Thorns, all these Pokemon that had been in NU no longer are. We got some new stars, we got some new team styles. I gotta let y'all know right now, this is cap. I'm gonna tell you why. Before I get into it, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, man. I'm trying to hit 9K subs before the end of the year. I want to hit 10K before the end of the year, but I really want to hit 9K. So let's do it. Everyone watching right now, you like daily uploads? You like competitive Pokemon? Subscribe, stick around for the fun. You'll get a lot of good stuff around here. I'm proud of the work we do here. So, naturally, new additions, rises, drops. We're going to talk with some new additions, and I do want to point out the Scyther nomination real quick. Scyther should be on the Viability ranking thread. I think this is literally just... We forgot to vote on it. So it's going to get voted on next time. It will probably be relatively high compared to where people would expect it to be. But Scyther's a very good mon. I just want to say that before we get into it. Y'all already know my stance, of course, on Scyther, but just a reminder. Overquill all the way up into A+. Now, you could argue this is a little bit of an overranking. It really depends on how you view the metagame right now, in my view. And there's a couple reasons that. One, I think the more utility-based Overquill sets aren't as good as they projected to be coming into the metagame, mainly because of the Cresselia ban. I believe the utility sets had a lot more use back when Cress was around to just stunt all over, and with Cress gone, it's a little trickier to justify them, in my view, over Incineroar, which has a little bit more flexibility with its supportive sets. Now, you could argue Overquill has a little bit better of a move pool, but I think Incin has just more that it can do as a utility option, because you can fit Sword Stance on it still really easily. Alternatively, you've got Wisp sets, and I feel like that divide for Incin is a lot more significant with Overquill, where you look at it from preview and it's like, okay, well, if you're not on a very obvious hyper offense team, you're just some boring mon, and there's really nothing more to take from it. There's some shock factor sets with like choice item, whether it's like Bandit or Scarf. Those aren't bad, and you can still throw spikes on them. But in my view, I think Overquill's reason for A+, and why I do feel that it should be A+, is for Rain. Now, I say this, I don't think you have to use Overquill on Rain, but I believe that it is what makes Rain as strong as it is right now, because when you consider checks to Overquill compared to like Basculegion and Kingdra and Ludicolo, a lot of it's like water types. Now, Ludi kind of the exception there, but special walls, right? Overquill is going to destroy those. But if you're thinking about how Vaporeon is normally one of the bigger roadblocks to Rain, Overquill's one of the options where you're just like, I don't care, I'm maiming you. You can't check me unless you're Terra Poison, and you better be scalding me and burning immediately, and you better also hope you have no chip and that I don't predict you in Crunch. There's a lot that can go wrong with that sequence for Vaporeon, and otherwise counterplays like things like Gastrodon, for example, which Overquill, of course, can beat down really easily. The primary issue for Quill on Rain is just that Croakrain's getting some more use, and you could definitely justify Toxicroak entirely over Overquill, because, you know, compared to how Overquill just outright 1v1s Vaporeon, Toxicroak does that while still walling it, so that is a bit of an issue. I could see Quill dropping a little bit, but I think what Overquill does defensively for offensive teams is why it's so high and why it's so good. Whimsicott up to B-. I'm gonna be real. A lot of this is just because it's got a very convenient defensive typing and some decent enough utility with Encore. Encore is a pretty nice option for shutting down some setup stuff, and the fact that Flygon, Paldean Tauros, even Mienshao are all really good wall breakers, and Whimsy is a decent enough check into all of them, it's pretty good roll comp. And even like Phantom says, you could definitely facilitate some hyper offense builds too with moves like Sunny Day. Uxie up to B+. I'd argue the biggest reason for this is actually just filling the Cresselia void. It does literally the same stuff defensively through typing, but Uxie has a deeper utility move pool, so if you want, there's a little bit more that it can tap into there. I'm just not of the belief that Uxie is worth using as a utility option. Rather, I like Uxie as a setup sweeper. Big difference between it and Cress is Yuxi's access to Nasty Plot, meaning it can become a lot scarier a lot quicker. So when you tap into those offensively EV'd sets, because Yuxi kind of does the same stuff as Cress in that regard, where yeah, you're probably going bulky most of the time, but you can go the offensive EVs if you want to bother dark types a little bit more immediately. When Yuxi does that, it's a lot more annoying because it's boosting so much more quickly. And then you've got Encore with Yuxi, which can just debilitate stall teams or otherwise defensive teams. You've got Sub as well, which is kind of similar in how it does that, although Sub's more there just to bother certain, like, mons that may try and get damage on you. Like, say a Flygon trying to U-turn, you could Terra Fairy and Sub, and they U-turn out faster, they get very little chip, you now have a Sub up. And, like, yeah, Steel types exist, but the most common one's Bronzong, and it does not always have a Steel move. You know, a lot of them still are Body Press, Psychic Noise, Stealth Rock, and then, like, Iron Defense, for example. So that kind of set's really bad for it to run into Yuxi with. Venusaur up to C. Now, we do see defensive Venusaur talked about here. I do think this is a real set. I've used it, like, a little bit. I've seen it used too. But I'd actually argue the reason Venusaur got re-ranked was for Sun. We are starting to see just a little bit, and it's mostly in the NU seasonal tournament, which is, you know, it's one of those individuals, not a team tour. We're seeing a little bit of Sun. Just a little bit, enough to where Venusaur, which is definitely easier to do stuff with on manual Sun, it's at least doing enough there to where it can be re-ranked. Now, I don't know if this will lead to Scovillain getting re-ranked in the future. I don't know if this will lead to Venusaur going up higher as people try out more manual Sun, but that's my read on the Venusaur up to C thing. I haven't used it myself, but I'm obviously open to seeing Venusaur do something in the future. Now we got Rises. Mienshao goes up. This is very, very obvious. I've talked about Shao recently. Talonflame ban, not ban, Rise to Ryu, huge for it. Crest ban, huge for it. Oricorio Pom Pom ban, which actually just happened today. That's also big for it. These are all mons that potentially punished you locking into close combat. It's just good to have them gone. Now you're looking at mons like Vileplume and Glowbro as the primary punishers, I'd say, of CC locking. And that's not nearly as bad. You got some others too, like, say, Croak, Basculegion, Kilo, but these mons are a lot worse at switching into Shao because they're, you know, just a lot frailer. So, like, Kilo doesn't want to take an ice move. Croak really doesn't want to take CC even. Legion doesn't want to take a knock. So it's pretty tough for them in that regard. Life Orb's also really, really, really good. Just as a breaker. Spikes are incredible with Life Orb Shao. And the nice thing for Mienshao is it carries knockoff naturally. So you already have synergy with options like Overquill and whatever other spikers you want to consider. Diancy's another, Klefki, etc. Bronzong up to A+, it's been the best steel type forever. It walls Flygon pretty well. You know, you got to worry about Flygon teching coverage like Throat Chopper or Fire Punch, but otherwise really, really good. I don't really have anything else to say about Zong. It's been at the top of the meta now for a couple months. I think A+ is a pretty reasonable spot. My one hesitancy with Zong is, like, again, like I said, Flygon teching stuff for it. I do believe this mon's kind of punishable with certain tweaks to movesets, and that can make it a little tricky to use at points because it's not exactly the pinnacle of offensive prowess or anything. It is definitely exploitable with just random coverage, certain Terra types, and that can make it a little bit more difficult to still wall what you want to wall, but it hasn't really affected its consistency at all. And being a steel type with Levitate in the Spikes tier is pretty big. Kilo also goes up to A+. Biggest reason in my view is Kilo's benefiting a lot from Talon. You can tell my train of thought broke there. Biggest reason is Talon's rise to Ryu. Kilo is now the, like, undisputed fastest mon in the tier for unboosted mons. And with the ground types of the format being pretty terrible, offensive electric types in general get a bit of a buff. Kilo, of course, really liking that Flygon is the only ground type because that mon's so easy to pop with a Hurricane. And you could even do some stuff with Terra Fairy, Terra Blast if you super stunt, if you want a super stunt on Flygon, so that's also really good. Competitive's cool as well since the tier has so many Intimidate mons. you can find double switches to get this mon in on Intimidate, and, you know, free +2 to special attack is really, really huge. Otherwise, it just synergizes amazingly well with all the physical pivots in the tier that carry U-turn, so things like Basket Legion, Mienshao, Flygon. It's got a good roll on Rain. Just a lot to really like here. Paldean Tauros, Aqua also goes up to A+, and I'm sure Phantom was, you know, really punching the air with this one, because he thought this mon was, like, literally, he thought it was, like, bad, is what I got the vibe of. Bro was saying for a while that, Blaze Tauros was just better, and I'm like, no, brother. Stop that immediately. But this mon's continued to be amazing. Boot sets are just generally really consistent. Bandit's really good. Haven't seen a lot of Scarf, but, I mean, I'm sure it's fine. Biggest benefit to it historically, I'd say, has been as an Incineroar. But even as a nice rain check, it's pretty good too. Because at the very least, you check Basket Legion pretty nicely. You're an okay answer to Overquill because you've got Terra, potentially Terra Steel, like just bothering it if it tries to gunk shot you. And with Intimidate, I believe you'll have a hit up +1 at least. You live like Terra, Water, Liquidation, or Rain, I think. I might be speaking out of my ass regardless of that, though. You're pretty annoying for Rain to deal with. And again, like with Legion, it's like, okay, what do you do back? Look, man, the main thing is I can come in after sacking something to Legion. And if it is wave crashing, it's going to take so much recoil. Tisk tisk, man. Croak goes up too. This mon's been great for a while now. Vaporeon and Milotic both are really, really prevalent. And just like I talked about earlier too, Rain's really prevalent. So Croak's good in all those bulky waters. It's good into Rain. It's good on Rain. It's just very easy to find a lot of mileage. And of course, like many other Pokemon, it benefits a lot from Talonflame Rising because that forced a lot of bad sequences for Toxicroak. Because it's like, okay, well, I boost up with my Swords Dance. The Talon might just go for its Terra to take nothing from my Gunk Shot, and it'd burn me on the same turn. Very troubling. Crest Ban is, like, marginally okay for Croak, I guess. Terra Poison Crest, I guess, was annoying. It's not a huge deal, though. But a mon that definitely has continued getting better with time. Basket Legion back up to A. And big thing is just Rain. These sets are kind of like, who cares, man? They exist. I've even seen people talk about Spite on Basket Legion. Spite. So that's cool. That's real quirky and fun. As I said, I think Rain's the bigger ticker because Basket Legion, it's pretty much Legion and Overquill. You're going to pick one of those two if you think Rain's broken to cite as the reason for it. I'm on the Overquill train, but I definitely get the Legion point just because it's so hard to switch into. So, you got that going for it. Vapo goes up. Big thing in my view is with Rain being so good, Water Absorb is just really valuable. You're even seeing some more Gastrodon usage too, and I would say at least part of that is because of Rain. It's not like it's not like Vaporeon isn't, you know, beatable. I mean, Kilo's great on Rain, right? Overquill we talked about. Ludicolo can beat Vapo pretty easily, though I think you actually have to have Encore to beat Vaporeon 1v1. It's pretty dire. There's options around it, but the fact that you blank Basket Legion, like that in and of itself is pretty huge, as well as even checking Kingdra. Pom-Pom's banned, so Lamau, but as you see, it did go up to A. This is mad cap, though. I have absolutely no clue why we're being this reductive with a post. I could give you a long list of counterplay to Pom-Pom. I won't do it because it's banned, but I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent real quick. I think a lot of the Pom-Pom is broken argument came down to this theoretical set of Revelation Dance Pom-Pom. Please find me the people that were seriously using this over the past, like, several months. Because, I don't disagree that Rev Dance Pom-Pom is probably still good in this meta. But can we please stop citing imaginary sets that no one seriously considered? And they're all taunt. They're all taunt Terra Steel, man. Because you know why? That's the most consistent set you get out of that. You go for Rev Dance, you know what you do? You compromise your other matchups. So let's please be a little more serious in the future when talking about bans. I've noticed a lot of people really like to pretend Pokemon are harder to beat than they are. It's a little sad. Anyhow, Milotic went up too. It's really just, as I've said forever, it's pretty much as functional as Vaporeon. but with an extra move slot. That's all there is. Registeel, I have no clue why this mon went up to A- whatsoever. Maybe it's because of the Cope pom-pom checking? But that's all I can think of. I think Registeel's still pretty mid. I voted it down to B, I'm pretty sure, so that's funny. Toxtricity up to A-, it should go higher. But Toxtricity, a lot of it for me is Toxtricity synergy with both Flygon and Mienshao is kind of otherworldly levels of vile. It's so good with them. And defensive answers is Mon. You gotta predict really well. We are very fortunate that offensively we have Flygon around in the tier to keep this Mon honest. Even something like Water Tauros, at the very least, you know, you got that to be faster than Wave Crash. Don't talk about Scarf Toxtricity. We will not acknowledge that set. If people start hearing about it, they're gonna start using it. They're gonna realize it's good. Anyhow, just a very good breaker, and in my view, a lot better than Porygon Z, just because there's at least a marginal amount of defensive use to it. But I think at that point, you're splitting hairs anyway. They're both phenomenally strong options that are really pretty trivial to break with. I just prefer Tox because of the pivoting, I think, and it's like ever so slightly easier to get into battle. Gligar up to A-. This is a pretty big rise, but keep in mind what I said about, who was it? Kilo earlier. We don't have great ground types, so Gligar being an option, at the very least, it's going to get people to consider it. There are a couple other reasons, though, too. So the biggest of them being you're a decent Flygon check. You're actually also a pretty decent Kilowattrel check with proper EVing. You can avoid, I think, even a 3-hit KO from Hurricane? Maybe? Like, after Rocks, I think it's maybe a 2-shot after Rocks, but that's not too bad. Sometimes you just need a little extra room. And then, of course, the same reasons this Mon was S-rank for, you know, a long time, months ago. Utility Demon. All these moves right here. Throw in U-turn, too. Don't forget that. I guess they threw in U-turn here, but throw in U-turn right up here. T-Spikes, too. Why not? Talk about all the good options. But ground immunities are obviously just amazing in this metagame. Gligar Caparaj is like actually a pretty reasonable hazard stacking core because they both get knockoff. And Gligar, I've actually even seen a little bit of acrobatics Gligar because the main thing going for it, you use this Mon as a knock absorber pretty frequently. And with acrobatics, you actually one-shot Mienshao. You have to be knocked, but you one-shot Shao. And you also then have a good move to hit Breloom with. So, pretty cool answer to fighting types. Galarian Articuno also going up. Defog Punisher is insane to say here. Who am I punishing the defog of, my man? Who? Show them. Show the Altaria? Pursuing to Sid? Okay, bro. But Intimidate Punisher remains true, just like Kilowattrel. It's incredibly good at that. I think the Future Sight sets are kind of shit, and as you see here, Pokeslice actually made a point about that, where he says right here, I cannot recommend enough not using those sets. I do agree with him. They are a waste of a good Articuno. Calm Mind on this Mon is a cheat code, especially with Psychic Noise. You shut down so much bullshit with it, and it's just like, I'm gonna say just like Kilo, Incineroar is not a good Kilo check to begin with. It's just made worse by the fact it's competitive. But Gardecuno makes Incineroar's life such hell. Because you want this Mon Calm Minding and then you switch in, you give it another 2 boosts, and then it Hurricanes you into the Shadow Realm? Have fun, man. And there's a lot of good partners for this Mon too to make sure that Incin isn't like really a check anyway, even when it's at full. Because you just force chips, like Chandelure for example. Very easy way to get chip on Incin. Like this Mon a lot. And again, it's a ground immune, so extra points. Gastro Rise 2, part of it's Rain. Part of it's also Spikes are good in the tier. I'm not a Gastro supporter, but it also is a good Kilo check. There's enough on-paper stuff to justify our Rise for now. I think now it's a matter of does it actually see usage. Pouting towards Blaze, though, also going up. Just like Water Bull, it is really good. The main thing is a good Vileplume matchup, in my opinion. Plus, we're seeing more Will-O-Wisp on Incineroar lately, I believe because of the Crest ban. So having your Tauros form actually always answer Incin regardless of, you know, not having to fear the burn, it's actually, like, quite huge. Decid goes up too. I think part of this is just because it should have gone up a while ago and been higher. So, B+ is pretty reasonable. I could have argued into the A ranks, I think, before the shift. I feel Overquill dropping's at least enough reason to be cautious, but honestly, Decid may still be worth an A- ranking. Water Bowl matchup, I would not call it very positive at all, because Banded Wave Crash two-shots you very easily. But SD Decidueye is like genuinely monstrous, and since we're not seeing a ton of the utility Overquill, it's honestly stayed around pretty solidly. Plus, a very funny calc is +2 spell tag Poltergeist from Terraghost to Sid into a Lowland Muck. You only need to get like a single hit off on that mon before it's actually like getting threatened with an Oko. It's pretty vile. Grafia goes up. Even with Pom Pom's ban, I do kind of anticipate this to still be fair, but Grassy Terrain, it's probably the most common HO other than the Chinchino stuff. And Graph is really good on the builds. Seeing more usage as a standalone mon is not real at all, but Stories did use a team with it once, so I guess it counts for something, right? Kingdra goes up. I don't know why, because Kingdra Rain isn't used, but sure. Scrafty goes up because it exploits the bulky water builds really well. It's why I'm not a fan of Balance. I think there's way too many ways to punish those cores. But it also helps too that fairy types are not really used at all in this meta. It's like, I've seen a little Florges, and that's it. DNC every now and then. But otherwise, yeah. If anything, I just like Scrafty because it's a dark type that's different from my other options. Screamtail goes up. It's been used quite a lot on HO. I've seen a lot of Calm Mind Screamtail. And as Shinjin would say, we bring the boom. Thwacky goes up too. It's just Grassy Terrain, that's all. The Dunsparce goes up, and at this point, there's really nothing to say. The Dunsparce was B- like months ago, and now it's back up to B-. It's a fine Calm Mind or Coilmon, that's really it. Palisand to B-, because why not? Toxicroak's great. It checks Croak. It also checks Shao, kind of. You definitely don't like ice coverage, but you still check it. Alola Slash goes up. This is partly, I think, because of snow. People are a little interested in that. Standalone Steel type's crazy, because I think this one sucks as a standalone Steel, but there is potential there just because it's got hazard removal, so I vibe with it. Now we get some drops. There's not really a ton, so we're going to probably go pretty quickly through them. Monkey Dory dropping. There's a couple of reasons for this. I think the biggest, of course, is Overquill's drop, just naturally is bad for Monkey Dory. Another, though, is Crest Ban. Monkey was actually a pretty good response to Crest, because you could switch in very easily and threaten a trick. I think you could even argue the same with Pom Pom. You constantly had Trick to threaten these mons, because you were just faster than them always, and you completely shut them down once you tricked them a Scarf. Now some of them getting banned, it's like, I don't know if they're that good anymore. So there's that. Glowbro hates Overquill being around, but I don't know if I dropped to A-. I'd still think this mon's pretty solid as a physical wall. You can just throw boots on it. But I do agree with the meta being fast-paced. That does suck for it. Inteleon doesn't really like the fact that there's so many water absorbers now. It's just not good for it. That's all I can say. PZ dropping, I think PZ is a little overrated in A, so I'm glad to see it go down to A-. Like Phantom says here, Toxtricity is getting used more. That's really just it. And I've honestly found, too, PZ is really hard to build with, because you need to play it with pivot spam and nothing else. And the last time I saw a Porygon Z team, other than Mr. PhD himself bringing it to a seasonal round versus a Tree, I saw in that game a good PZ team, but the last time I saw it, it was literally used on a team with either no pivots or it was like single pivot Gligar on a Spike Stacks team that had no knockoff otherwise. It was really bad. Pert goes down. I think honestly a lot of it is just, it's so hard to say. I think people just don't like Pert structures right now though. Like, it doesn't do anything a water type would normally do. It's other than like check Overquill pretty reasonably. But as a ground type, I don't know, man. It doesn't check Kilo that well unless you run specially defensive sets. And if you go Spadef on this mon, it's like, what do? You check Kilo and what else? So it's just kind of awkward to use. I think Pert's kind of back into that point of like, it doesn't fit on necessarily too many teams or any specific archetype where you're like, oh, yeah, this is a Pert build. So, meh. Jigalgi, admittedly, a mon I like, but not been used a lot lately. Zong is everywhere, and you have to run Shadow Ball with, like, Terra Ghost to do anything to Zong, which is pretty suboptimal. It's just, yeah. I think this mon's really pressed to find value in games. Rotom Heat goes down too because, yeah, I have to run Terra Fairy on this to actually check Flygon. And otherwise, I think there's just so many good ground immunities available that do the same type of stuff Heatom would do. I'm just kind of like, who cares? Dreadnought goes down too. Water Bull sends its regards is a very good summation of why I also think Croak. Plus, this Mon has, like, no place on Rain. I think Dread's a fine Mon, by the way. It's just, again, it's kind of a usage issue where it's like, where have you been? Same with Infernape. Where have you been, bro? Plus, it's just inferior to Mienshao, to Fire Tauros, to Water Tauros. There's nothing this Mon does well. Specs is probably still good, just like when I used it months ago, but that's it. Serena's ass. Too bad of, like, that 4 Mooslot syndrome be hitting like crack, bro. Be hitting like crack. Oh, it's bad. Wo-Chien, bro. Nobody's used this Mon, and it fits on only some of the slowest paced teams possible, and I'm here to tell you, they're not consistent enough. You could definitely, if you're playing tournaments, I think you could see team people with slow teams, like we've seen Nick Megan do to a couple players, but I'm not bringing this too consistently and feeling good about it. Wo-Chien is probably, like, functionally okay enough, but I don't think you could justify it being very high on our VR right now. Pawmot goes down to C, because when was the last time you saw a Pawmot? Quill unranked, because when's the last time you saw a Hisuian Quillfish in Overquill's tier? Brute Bonnet gets unranked, because there's just not really any reason to use it at this point as a dark type. Doesn't really offer anything unique other than, I guess, Sucker Punch. And that's it. And then Pincurchin gets unranked, and that one is pretty clear. It's because Iron Thorns went down. Or not went down, went up to our ban list. And the whole point of a Pincurchin was that technically you unlocked Iron Thorns to run an item that wasn't booster energy. But now that point's gone, so, well, nothing you can do about that. But I hope all y'all enjoyed this wonderful little update. Like I said, also Pom-Pom's banned, so there's that. Yeah. Man. That's all I gotta say for y'all. Catch y'all next time. Peace.